Welcome, everyone, to a special Pulse of the Movement episode, Transcending the Water Crisis, with two amazing leaders in this field, Warren Brush and Gemma Boulos. We're very excited to be doing this episode around water, broadcasting live here from California, from the Bay Area. And as many of you know, California has been in a very serious drought crisis and has been recently been a lot of destruction with fire as well, which is intricately related. So we're really happy to be here right now for this special webcast put on by Empowerment Works, Living Mandala, and the Northern California Permaculture Convergence, the Building Resilient Communities Convergence, coming up here in just about a week and a half or so. So very excited to be here with you all. Does everyone want to say hi?
Hi!
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Great, though. Thank you all. So I want to introduce Melanie St. James, the Executive Director of Empowerment Works and the Global Summit, to just welcome everyone and say a few words, and then we'll get going with our webcast here.
Thank you so much, Jay, and hi, everyone. We started the Pulse of the Movement series right out of the Global Summit 2014, which Warren and Gemma were grateful, very grateful they were part of, as we saw so many incredible leaders and movements that we're trying to converge in this 2 or 3 or 4 day event, however you roll it out, and wanted to continue the conversation out of the Global Summit throughout the year as we build momentum for 2014, which is going to be in Brazil just after the Summer Olympics there. So yes, I don't think there could be a more timely or important issue, and I'm just grateful that we have these two truly world-renowned leaders and solutionary heroes of mine to be part of this special event. So thank you so much for joining, and thank you, Jay.
Great. So the structure of this webinar, again, the conversation is all about transcending the water crisis. And I'm hearing a little bit of echo. If anyone could mute that's not muted. So I think a lot of us are quite familiar with the problem happening, again, not just here in California, but really all over the world. And one really exciting thing is that we really do have the toolkits and the solutions to really turn things around, really from our backyards all the way to our bioregions, and lots of things that we can do. So we really want to focus not so much around the crisis, but really around what we can do about it. And so the format of this webinar, we're going to give some time for each Gemma and Warren to talk about some of their work that they're up to and some of their experience and their solutions, both here locally in California and work abroad. And then we're going to have a little collaborative conversation and have room for some questions. So you'll notice if you're watching live right now, you can enter a question below the webcast screen, and at the end we'll have time for some questions and go more into conversation. So that's the format of this webcast, and I'll hand it back to you, Melanie. Introduce Gemma. I think you need to unmute yourself too.
Yes. So I am delighted to get to introduce Gemma Boulos, who I had the pleasure of meeting at Global Women for the World program that we both participated in. It's a global network of female social entrepreneurs that come together for a week in San Jose area up in the hills and see how we can collaborate together and build our movements. And I was just blown away immediately by Gemma and so impressed with her global work. And one thing I love is to see critical leaders really harnessing the passion of the arts. And I would say Gemma, in addition to being a serial award-winning social entrepreneur, is also a super stellar artist in action. And she's already led a global movement with her song We Rise and connecting literally a choir of 1 million voices around the world. So she knows how to tap into magic of art and social movements in society to really inspire people in many ways, which is exactly what the world needs right now, to keep it fun and inspirational. So, Gemma, I would like to ask you first, what is it that, why are you working with water? Why are you here on this program, and Why do you do the work that you do? And I'll just give you a few minutes, and then we'll hand it back to Warren and get back on a deeper dive with you. Tell us about you.
Sure. Well, I'll just basically give you a little bit of my background, which has absolutely nothing to do with water, actually. It was all in the arts. I was a professional jazz singer and preschool teacher in New York City, and on Tuesday, September 11th, I called in sick and didn't go to my class. And at the time, I would have actually been in the Trade Center when the planes hit. So that day, of course, changed my life and so many others. And you have to wonder how that connected to my water work. Well, it was sort of an accidental path. Like I think many of us here find themselves on. We feel like we're on this path, and like water, we get diverted when we find a better path. And so what I ended up doing after the tragedy was I wrote a song in response to it, because I saw such an amazing connectedness with New Yorkers, everybody coming together and really showing the part of themselves that was so deeply connected. And I wanted to see if we could find that kind of connection again, only this time through celebration instead of sadness. And this song I wrote, We Rise, ended up turning into not just a song to inspire my sort of personal healing, but to also to help others and bring them together. So I had this crazy notion I was going to build a 1 million voice choir around the world to sing it. So I left my life, my careers, my jobs, my rent-controlled apartment, took my backpack and guitar and started to travel around the world, inviting people to be part of this global movement, because I was going to build a 1 million voice choir to sing it from all over the planet. And here's where the water part comes in. It just so happened that the metaphor, I used a metaphor, the notion that it takes a single drop of water to start a wave, as my invitation to people to ask themselves, to see themselves as that powerful drop of water, that their every thought and their every word and their every action was that drop of water, and that it will ripple out. It will impact everyone around them. And so as I was traveling around with that message, people started to call me the water lady, the lady singing for water. And so I got invited to sing at many different events, and one of them that totally changed the course of everything that I'm doing now was the Water for Life conference at the United Nations. And here I was, this singer singing this song about, uniting people and asking people to see themselves as this powerful drop of water. And then I learned about the actual water crisis. And at the time, there were 1.2 billion people who didn't have access to water. There were 3 to 5 million people dying every year of water-related disease, and that just was unfathomable to me. And so I started to learn everything I needed to learn. I wanted to learn about water. I started to experience it firsthand as I was traveling around the globe building this movement. And so by the time the day came for us to sing We Rise, which was actually, we had the 11th anniversary of it, on September 21st, 2004, by the time I had been traveling around the globe, we had over 100 cities and 60 countries join in this global movement. And although it was a wonderful event and a wonderful feeling to have all of these people around the world to connect through music and through this shared metaphor of water, it still wasn't enough. And it was very bittersweet, because I thought to myself, wow, 7 minutes of united song, what do we do on minute 8? And so that's when I started to really focus on doing water. So I learned everything I could. I learned really simple things that lay people like me could actually learn. And then I started to do water projects, namely the first place in the Philippines, and now has ultimately, my work has brought me ultimately to sub-Saharan Africa. And since then, since we started the water projects, we've been able to provide over 275,000 people with clean water and sanitation in Asia and Africa. So that's why I stumbled into water.
I love thank you, that's amazing, and I've got goosebumps and chills just getting to picture that journey. It's so magical, thank you. I'm glad I asked why, because it sounds like you didn't just react to the crisis, but you were actually pulled in, and such a beautiful story. Thank you. All right, I'll pass it over to Jay to introduce Warren. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Gemma. 275,000 people giving access clean and safe water. That is really quite an accomplishment. Really commend your work on that. Thank you so much. So we'll be hearing more from Gemma in a little bit, and I want to transition now into introducing Warren, Warren Brush, who is really a personal hero of mine. Warren's been a friend and mentor and colleague, and really is one of the veteran permaculture teachers and designers doing a lot of amazing work both here in California and all over the world, in the Middle East, in Europe, in Australia, in Africa especially too. And Warren is just really such an amazing man, not only in the work he does with permaculture, particularly with water, doing a lot of amazing dry land restoration in places like Quail Springs, one of the several different organizations he's a co-founder of, but also really being a mentor, being a cultural architect with Wilderness Youth Project and so many other kinds of work that Warren does. He's one of the people that really, I feel like, not only walks his talk, but really wears his heart on his shoulders too, and has so much joy and compassion into what he does, into making a difference. I think for the same reasons that we all see, really identifying some of the big challenges that we're seeing right now, and knowing that there are solutions out there as well. So thank you so much for being with us, Warren. And I'll just hand it over to you. We'd love to hear a little more about you and what makes you so inspired about the work that you're doing, and then just kind of move into what you have to share with us today.
Oh, lovely. Thank you, Jay, so much for hosting us, and Melanie for hosting us as well, and just the graciousness in which you are approaching your work in the world. So thank you so much. And Gemma, my God, so lovely to hear your words and to hear your heart, and I would love to hear your song as well. It's such a lovely story. And when asked the question myself of why do I work with water, and it's not about me working with water, it's about water is me. I am mostly water. All of us are mostly water, and there is so much of a connection with all of life that comes through water. And I love what the Apache people say, is they say that water is the spirit that moves through all things. And when you think about that, you realize that it is a way for us to connect to all other living things is through the water in which we share. And for me, that's always been a big part of my life. I've always understood for me that water, one, also holds the female principle, and is also a part of my balance of being a man, is also having a good relationship with water. And I remember going into, I was asked to go to Liberia right after the war had ended in 2005. And it was an amazing journey to a land where there is a lot of water. And yet within that there was not a lot of water that was actually available to people that wouldn't make them sick. And yet the women there had such a special relationship with the water. And I was teaching a permaculture course and learning from all the local people, because whenever I go to another country, it's not about sharing, it's about an exchange. It's about learning how, when I come home, I can live better because I was with my colleagues in Africa and my friends in Africa. And it's never an aid project, but a mutual exchange project. And I was in facilitating this permaculture course, and there was this midwife there who asked me if I wanted to go to a ceremony out at a faraway village from where we were holding the course, where they were going to do a water ceremony. And I was so touched by that, and I was so grateful to do that. And the founder of the organization that had brought me out there, myself and some other people from the course, went with this midwife to her village. And it was a beautiful journey out to this village where there is a very special stream, that the stream itself flows directly to the ocean without it ever hitting another. It doesn't go into a river. It was a place from the village to the ocean, was a direct route out. And we gathered all around, and the whole village came out, and people from other villages came out, and everybody was wearing the ceremonial white, and they had a goat and they had a chicken, and we went out with the women, and the women led the ceremony to honor the waters. And they shared about how when they do the ceremony, what they were asking for was that the water itself would be the medium by which peace could go out into the world. So imagine now everything touching the water. All of us who are alive, all of us that are listening to this podcast, everybody we know are mostly water. And so the waters that they were doing the ceremony with, that they were doing, they did a goat sacrifice and a chicken sacrifice, and these songs that they did and special prayers and things that they said they have been doing for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. They were doing it as women to bring peace to the world through the water. And so for me, my relationship with water is one that I'm constantly learning of its power, and I'm also very, very humbled by the life-giving quality of what water brings us. And so for me, I'm just passionate about this work, and I'm passionate about other people who recognize and value water. It's something that is more than just this substance we look at and often take for granted in our life. It's something that we have to remember touches every living soul in the world. And when we think of it like that, we have to really think of it as something that we cherish, something that we steward, something that we feed, something that we protect. And that's become a part of the work that I do here at home, which might be at our place called Quail Springs, or as I'm going to show you in a few minutes, some of the work we're doing in farming. How we steward the water has to hold the sacred in the water. Even as a farmer, it's important that we don't forget the value of water and the beauty of water and the life-giving properties of water. So just to give a little snapshot of my relationship to water and a little bit of why I'm doing this, that's what came to mind. So let me open a series of slides here. This might take me a moment.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you so much, Warren. Such a beautiful reminder about that. I really love that how you frame it all, and thinking also about how we are 80% water and the planet is 80% water, and really we are on planet water, not exactly planet Earth. Really excited to see some of the examples of your work on a small scale, and as you're pulling up that slide, I just want to make one last reminder to people. Feel free to put your questions into the chat, and we'll have time to address some of them at the end of the session here.
Thank you so much. Are the slides showing up there, Jay?
Yep, looks good.
Good. So yes, just as I was sharing, if there's magic on the planet, it's contained in the water, and I like to always begin with that thought, and then really just to bring to the table here that the water cycle and the life cycle are one, and I appreciate Jacques Cousteau who had coined that term, because it's important for us to remember that where there's life, there's water. And so as people living in this world, that we're living in our agro ecosystems, we really have to be aware of how water moves in our world, and how water moves in the world in which we're touching through our purchases, through our how we buy our food, where we get our food, how we build our homes. There's a lot of people don't realize that of the very small percentage of available fresh water in the world, which is less than 1%. It's like 0.03% of the world's water is actually available as fresh water, and we use 70% of it for agriculture. And I have a lot of friends who say, oh yeah, if you're wasting water by flushing the toilet, and I'm a compost toilet kind of person myself, but that the water that you're losing in a flush of a toilet is so nominal compared to what you use when you actually are buying food that's from the industrial, modern, non-water conscious agriculture. So, just look at some of these statistics. If you look at just even a quarter pound of beef in today's modern, non-sustainable, non-regenerative agriculture, you have 3,000 gallons of water being used for 1/4 pound of beef, or up to 650 gallons per pound of rice. And when you start to look at that, those are statistics from modern agriculture, and it doesn't have to be that way. And as I make my way around the world, people call me all the time to look at how they can save water in their agricultural use. And what I say is that it can't just be about saving water. It also has to be about how we're helping water to get back home into the land. How do we create the sponge in the landscape? There's a lot of statistics out there, and obviously we're not going to spend a lot of time with that, but you know, there's so much overpumping and water being drawn from aquifers faster than it can replenish. Up at the aquifer that's near to Quail Springs, we actually did a oxygen isotope test on the water of a nearby organic carrot farm, where they were pulling up 1,200 gallons a minute of water to make, you know, basically grow organic carrots in a place that organic carrots don't want to grow unless they have an enormous amount of water. And basically we found that in that aquifer, the youngest water, and in that test with the oxygen isotope, we can actually tell the last time that water was rainfall, that it was, the youngest water was 16,000 years old. And just thinking about that is, to me, mind-boggling, that here's this water coming up for us in this just short time of life. We're taking water that's been sitting there for over 16,000 years, and we're overdrafting it faster than it can be replenished. And so we really have to rethink our agriculture. Of course we need to conserve at our home. Of course we need to get rid of the lawn. Of course we need to look at how we can slow the use of water in a domestic sense, but really we have to really focus on the agriculture and how we work with agriculture, because we're literally destroying our soils because the way that we are doing our agricultural practices. This particular slide that I'm showing now is a conservation hydrology slide that Brock Dolman had put together up at the Water Institute at OAEC, and it's something that I use to show a little bit of an idea around recreating the sponge in the landscape. So when we talk about water in the work that I do, whether I'm in the northern Liberia and Laikipia working with badly eroded landscapes with the Maasai women up there, or I'm in Cuyama, which is behind Santa Barbara in Southern California, or I'm in Australia, or I'm in Europe, I'm always looking at how do we recreate the natural sponge in the landscape where people are living. So much of the work with permaculture is actually about how we revitalize damaged landscapes. We actually don't go into the natural forest and we say, okay, we're going to do permaculture here. What we do is we go into damaged landscapes and we mimic natural systems to be able to recreate the sponge. So let me give an example of this with our farm. This is our family farm, which is a 50-acre farm outside of Santa Barbara, California. And one of the things that, you know, being in California right now, all over the world, people are talking about the drought that's here. And why is that? You might say, why would people be talking about drought here when you also have droughts in other parts of the world? Well, so much of the world, a lot of the world's agriculture is nested here in, or I should say, America's breadbasket is here. It's like we have more of the vegetables of the country are grown in California than any other state, and our fresh vegetables and fruits. And so this is something where it's really affecting a huge country by having a drought in the area that's considered its breadbasket. So Casitas Valley Farm and Creamery, we have a cheese creamery as well, but we are a place in the midst of drought. It's been a 4-year drought, and we really had to look at what was going on with the water, what was going on with the hydrology. And when we bought this farm 3 years ago, water was just flowing off and eroding away the landscape. So one of the things we did is we did drill a well, and I believe that you can actually work with wells in a way that is sustainable if you're very conscious about how you replenish the water that you actually take out. So we drilled a well that actually went to 1,000 feet or 330 meters, and when we got down to the 1,000 feet, it artesianed up to 240 feet below the surface of the land. And we did a pump test and found that, we only needed to put the well pump at about 300 feet. Now, this is a picture of the wellhead here, where basically 300 feet down, we then put a well pump that then during the day with solar panels pumped up to the top of our land, 3 10,000-gallon tanks. It pumps the water up during the day with solar, and then at night we can use the gravity to water at night. And just that process of watering at night, we save 30% of the water that we were using on a daily basis up to that point. So just some sensible, simple management changes like that, we were able to save million gallons of water, basically. And this is a picture of our solar panels, and then I'll share a little bit more of the story of how we actually shifted this landscape that was eroding away, and basically the water that was falling on the land was going and causing erosion down an erosion gully, and it had all the avocados you see in the upper right-hand corner, all the water was draining into a drainage and causing all this erosion. And here it is, the people who had owned it before us were buying thousands of dollars of water from a lake that was not sustainably harvesting water, and they were bringing in this water very expensively, but also from an unsustainable source, and they were basically having to pay that rather than to look at how the water that was falling on their land could be used. So we came in, and this is my son-in-law Jesse, driving this. This again, it's a family operation, and he learned to drive this excavator, and we basically started to build these on-contour structures that. I'm here in America where there's a big excavator, or I'm in Kenya in Lake Victoria on a place called Rusinga Island where we can do it with shovels, we still use the same principles applied at different scales. So this particular slide is showing this on-contour ditch that allows the water that's flowing across the land to get caught by an on-contour ditch that then it infiltrates in and doesn't erode away. And all of that water that formerly had gone off the land now goes into the groundwater. We also did strategies like working with a keyline plowing system to open up the badly compacted land that had been overgrazed and been basically abused for many, many, many years. We were able to open up to try to get the water, to get the nutrient, to get the atmospheric exchanges happening with the soils and get the soil biology working rather than it being something that was causing damage further downstream. We, of course, mulched the entire system. There's multiple swales here. You can see in the background the solar panels that pump our well. There's a couple other pictures as well. We also integrated into our swales systems we call hugelkultur systems, where we bury a lot of organic mass, which allows us to grow plants on the mounds that actually slow the water. We planted now with many, many perennial plants, and so this is the building of a hugelkultur swale. We also developed, we work with a lot of the those of you who are really interested in learning about how to revive natural stream beds, there's a great book called Induced Meandering by Bill Zidek. And Bill talks a lot about how do you work with pulling water or moving water in an erosion gully like this. And so this is what's called a zuni bowl, which is a way that we actually pulled out of the erosion gully the water, re-spread it out into the landscape. So much of the damage that's that's happening right now with erosion and with the, basically a wasting of the water happens because we've concentrate the water. And the concentrated water has so much power, it just eats away the landscape. So what we do is we then take out that power and re-spread the concentrated energy through the landscape so that then the biology can use the energy rather than the energy being picked up as erosion. So it's a whole different way of thinking. When we did this earthworks, it was amazing. 4 days after all of the earthworks that were done, we had the largest rain that we had had in 3 years. And it was just like, you know, I was out there in my gumboots. I have my granddaughter with me. We're stomping around in the rain, just, yay, you know, just screaming like this is the most amazing thing, that all this water that used to cause this damage downstream is now captured in the land and sinking in and recharging the wells and charging the biology that's in the landscape. And here it is. I'm looking at all this water in here. This is a very fancy spillway that you're seeing that the wall flows over if it does overflow. And there's the swell systems all filled with water all the way down. And after that, I was out there for a couple hours. I went back to my mother-in-law's house, who's on the land, and she had the news on. And it was funny. Up to that point, it was drought, 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 drought. Everything in the news was drought, 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 drought. And that day, the rains came across California. And I step in there, and I've got the big smile on my face, and I've got my grandbaby, and the swells are filled, and I'm just like, can't wait to share this with my mother-in-law and my family. And she's like, oh my God, it's devastating. There's floods around California. And I look on the news, and there's like houses washing away and agriculture washing away and just all of this incredible devastation. And I realized that California wasn't ready for the rain. Here it is, we're talking about, you know, drought, 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 but we're not preparing for the receiving of the rain. We actually disgraced the rain. That's how I felt. It was like all of California was, you know, much of California had not even thought about what happens when the rain comes. Now, it's amazing, you would think, with a state like California, which has so much engineering adeptness and forethought and innovation, that there would be this thought about how do you receive the rain so the rain can actually replenish life. And that's what really got me going. And I gave an article, I think Jay has it on one of their websites, and hopefully it'll come to you guys who are watching, the people who are watching this, that, you know, I wrote an article about why is it that California is not preparing for the rain. And I think this is an example of why we need to prepare to receive the rain, because we need to be able to grow our future. We need to be able to not cause damage by, you know, when the rain does come, we don't want it to be damaging, but we want it to be life-giving. And that has a lot to do with how we've engineered our landscapes. So this is some pictures of the growth that happened afterwards, because we've allowed the water to actually go where it wants to go, which is in the soils. And that's what happens in nature. It goes into the soils. Show you another couple slides, and then I'll turn it back over so we can hear from our beautiful Gemma. This is my grandbaby, Phoenix, on the left, and we also raise heritage breed pigs, and this is a beautiful red wattle pig going through the amazing ground covers that happen there. And then the growth that happens after you do this. So it's been amazing. And I'll leave you with a couple of statistics, because it's been really interesting to see that when the rains came, you know, our well water was sitting at 240 feet. And when the rains came and we captured all the rains, it went up to 20 feet below the surface of the soil. So now imagine we've stored all that water, and it's brought the surface or the subsoil water up to a place of 20 feet below the surface. And now for all of our agriculture, we have 1,600 avocado trees, we've got 300 persimmon trees, 160 apple trees, hundreds of other trees, all this other agriculture, a cheese creamery, all this. And over a few million gallons of water that we've had to use since the end of the rainy season, we still have only used 100 feet of that water. So we're still not even back to the 240 feet, and we're working within the water budget of what we caught. So I wanted to just share that with you, and I'm super excited that the dialogue with water is happening in a way that is catching people's attention, because all of us are connected to it. Every single decision we make, every buying decision goes back to the water, it goes back to the soil. We need to be so conscious of what we're doing with our water. We all need to support farmers who are capturing their water. We need to create mandates within the different jurisdictions, whether we're in a 2/3 world scenario or in a 1/3 world scenario. We need to make sure that there's no runoff. The water needs to go back to where it can give life. And so thank you for letting me share a little bit about that. Hopefully my timing worked out well for this. Jay?
Hi, I'm going to have the honor of segueing here.
Great.
My gosh. Warren, I just so love that you're not only a phenomenal storyteller and world weaver, but you demonstrate such incredible, tangible solutions. It's so hopeful. Let me get my camera back on here, although that view was nice. Yeah, the stories from Africa, and just also how you and Gemma both weave and honor and love these communities that you work with, and that's what I'm so proud to present here with you, is really bringing back solutions from places who have been facing the kind of ecological challenges that a lot of us here are just now starting to look at. So I'm seeing Casitas Valley Farms, you're actually totally, it's a paradigm-shifting solution, and we're in a very drought-stricken area. I'm actually in Santa Barbara, very close to Summerland and Carpinteria, where those slides are demonstrating solutions, and to make a sponge of that and to literally reverse a crisis right here at home in one of these drought-stricken areas is so hopeful at a time when I think people are becoming more apathetic. So I just want to honor all of that work that you do and allow everyone to take it in. It might need to be listened to again. And I am delighted to get back to Gemma here, our social entrepreneur, artist, singer, and water wisdom carrier and hero, and hear about the incredible work that you've been doing in Africa and globally to impact and bring vitality to hundreds of thousands of people and communities. So, Gemma, please share with us.
Sure, thank you. Oh my gosh, Warren, that was just so inspiring and such simple, incredible, intuitive solutions, and I just love that they are doable, that anyone can take them and, you know, translate them to anywhere in the world. And that's one of the, I think, beautiful things about permaculture and about the work that works is when you listen not only to other people but to the landscape and listen to what it needs. And, you know, I feel like in my journey, having known nothing about water, having known nothing about international development, having known nothing about, you know, just that kind of work, I often found myself having to behave like water, having to look to water as my teacher. You know, not only is this metaphor, but now, and not only my cause, but as my teacher on how I was going to approach the work that I was going to do. And a lot of that has to do with, you know, water's qualities. You know, water just absorbs everything unconditionally. You know, it needs to connect with other water. It's all, you know, it shapes the landscape and the sides of mountains. It has the power to create and destroy. All of these wonderful qualities that water has are all things that we can learn from. And I like to think that how we've modeled our programs has been informed by water and those wonderful qualities. And so I'm going to talk more around the work that we're doing, focusing where water and human rights meet, water and, you know, women's rights, education, health, all of those things, sort of putting a face to how water can be of service in deep ways that we as first, you know, a developed nation won't understand, that, you know, our brothers and sisters across the globe are enduring. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the global water crisis, how it relates to human rights, how it relates to water sanitation and hygiene, health, education. So as I mentioned earlier, the people who there are nearly 1 billion people in the world who lack access to water. There have been huge efforts around the globe to make sure that those people have access to water. And when we say access to water, we're talking about an improved water source where they don't have to walk more than 15 minutes to get their water, and the water is relatively clean. So if you can imagine, 1 in 9 people in the world don't have that luxury and have to walk to get that water. And so how does that affect, the communities that don't have access? So in essence, for one of the biggest things that affected me as I was traveling and as I was learning more about the water crisis was to see how it affected women and girls the most. How it affects them the most is there are a number of ways. One, they're generally the ones who are fetching the water, so they're the ones who have to go find it when they don't have it. They generally have to do all the water-related chores, the washing, the cleaning, the cooking, the bathing, all of those things, and then because they can oftentimes spend up to 8 hours a day fetching water and doing water-related chores, women in turn cannot have access to economic opportunities, and girls can't go to school. And it's not just water that access to water that we're talking about, because when we talk about access to water, we're also talking about it having to be clean. Oftentimes, people may have access to water, but it's contaminated, and it will affect their health. And so, 3 to 5 million people die of water-related disease every year. And that's, again, unfathomable, knowing that there is abundance of water on this planet, and there are ways that we can harness it so it can serve everyone. And so the lack of access to water is not just an issue of having water available. It's also a question of water access, a question of water quality, making sure that water is clean, and then a question of sanitation, making sure that the water is safe from contamination. And so when the sector that I'm talking about when we talk about our water work is not just the water sector. It doesn't necessarily deal with agriculture. It doesn't necessarily deal with, some of the work that Warren's talking about. We're talking about it as it relates to health. And so the sector of water that I'm referring to is what we call WASH, the acronym Water, Sanitation, and Hygiene. Because in order for you to have an opportunity at optimum health, you have to have, as it relates to water, you have to have all 3 of those things: water, sanitation, clean water, sanitation, and hygiene. So when we talk about it in the context of international development, we refer to it as WASH. And because if you have access to water but it's not clean, you're at risk. If you have access to clean water but you don't have toilets and it can contaminate the water, then you are at risk. If you have toilets but you don't have good hygiene practices, you're at risk of getting sick. So the work that we do is addressing not just the access to water crisis, but being able to address all of them holistically. And so what we do, and because women and girls are affected the most by it, I mean, there are other social issues that arise because of lack of water as it relates to women and girls. You've already heard me talk about the access to, not being productive and not being able to go to school. There are oftentimes girls will drop out of school by the 8th grade because there's no toilets, and when they start menstruating, they have nowhere to clean themselves. So, and if there are no toilets, oftentimes women and girls have to relieve themselves openly, and they are at risk of getting attacked and raped. So you would never think that lack of access to water would have such violent repercussions and security risks. So we focus on women because women and girls, again, are the most affected by it. And the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, found that the lack of women the lack of women's inclusion in water and sanitation projects was the cause of their high rate of failure. And it seemed unfathomable for us to find that although women and girls are the most affected by this crisis, they're the least referred to. They're the least included. So our goal was to address this WASH crisis by training the people who are the most affected by it, and that was women. And so what we really focused on was training women to be WASH technicians, so they're able to construct multiple technologies to address all three of those issues I was talking about: water, sanitation, and hygiene. They are also able to train others to do so, so building their confidence as educators, as well as leaders and speakers and facilitators. And then finally to monetize and make sure that they can make money and professionalize their services. So I'm going to actually have Jay play a short video of the work that we do, and I'll talk a little bit more about it, and then why we do it the way we do it, and then we can go into the question and answers. So Jay, if you want to play the video. So
great.
Yeah. So just a little preview. These are women that we've worked with, that we've trained, who've been part of a 3-year training program, a very intensive training program, where we support them in building their technical capacity to construct. We've helped them to turn that into entrepreneurial opportunities, and we've have helped them to build their confidence so that they can actually serve and start having their voice on local water boards. So this is a video of some of the women.
Okay, transferring over to the video right now.
For us. That's why I'm trying to learn as much as I can. I'm not doing this work on my own. I'm doing this work with a group of women. I want to break the barriers. How many? How many? Women actually at the core of all economic activities in their families, of all health activities in their families, and even hygienic activities. They are the one, it's all on their shoulders. I've learned so many things. How to test water, construction of water tanks, how to construct the biosad filter, making of the sanitary towels, how a woman can harvest water. We also learned that apart from that, even soap making, how to make shampoo and hand wash, it was also important, because you can have clean water, but if your hands they are not washed, it will still contaminate you. In the sex worker for so many years, but when I get computer, I learn. She said me all times, no, I can read bridge, I can read the hand. I think I'm almost to be a technical engineer. I think sanitation is something that people do not know how to deal with. I'm going to put my toll number so that they can call me and I can tell them, yes, you can do this and this and this and this. Please come to me. I get their money and they get my product and they have good sanitation. These activities earn women money, and I cannot take my kids to better schools, which I cannot pay good money. If I consider what my salary was and what I've just done once, I already made 50% of what my salary used to be. So like, I'm thinking if I venture into this like completely and this is what I do, I'll even go to 200%.
I'm going to be 67 this November. Now I'm in the position of being secretary for water board, secretary for works for a woman. I never thought, not even a dream came out of my mind that I would have been this. Because for me, I thought now I've retired as a nurse. But now, I think I have come and gained my knowledge, my strength. Now I'm able to do more things than when I was in civil servant.
I can now talk freely with people. I can now interact with leaders in the society. They recognize me as a leader, even at home, where I'm born and where I'm married. They look at me in a different way. Most people come to me for consultation on issues of water, and not just water. They look at me as a leader who can give advice. The GWWI program has put me in a level that I never imagined I could be.
We feel empowered, we feel the ownership, we feel we really deserve this thing, like you've made it yourself. So I think it's really good because culture, men are taking over. We want to do most of the things ourselves. So if we are like that, then the world will change, really.
Even the warriors came to give us a hand. They have never seen women doing such thing in their life. So they were so excited. Every day we could have more and more. So come and see what women can do in the community. These powerful women.
They are really talking to us.
So those were just a few of the women that we work with and that we've trained. And what's been exciting to watch is that water has been the uniter. Water has been the women have been able to bypass some of the challenges they would have had to endure, as they were challenging gender stereotypes. Many of these women that you saw in this video, and most of the women that we've trained, have never picked up shovels before. They've never laid a brick. They've never mixed cement. And here they are now going into their communities with, doing stuff that men would normally be doing. And instead of getting pushback, which you could think that they would be getting because, the men could be basically saying you're taking our jobs, but instead, because it's water and because it's everybody agrees on water and everybody in the community needs it, it was a way the women came into their leadership and were able to step into not only alleviating their own personal burdens, but being able to bring solutions that the whole community needed. So in essence, what water ended up being for us was an entry point for women's leadership, was an entry point for women's voices, was an entry point for the marginalized people who are most affected by this lack of water, sanitation, and hygiene, and bringing them to a point where they were not only sitting on boards because they were trying to meet a gender quota, just in case there were, because oftentimes those were the solutions that people had to, making sure that women were represented. Is just having them sit on be included, but we wanted them to be included because they had expertise in water. They could customize their services to very, very different for very different communities and their needs. And it just so happened that they were women. So for us, it was really a question of bringing the people to the table who needed to be at the table, not only to be able to contribute the challenges that they were having, but also to have the solutions. And so that was how we really focused on the kinds of solutions that we are training the women to do. We were very, all the technologies that the women learned and all the products that they learned to hand make, they could all be made with local materials. They've all been proven and already built in and were already implemented in their regions, so that so when they were introducing these technologies and being able to build them, they didn't have to spend tons of money to import new technologies. They didn't have to bring outside experts in to manage it and maintain it. They didn't have to, when something broke, they didn't have to go out or order parts or leave it dormant because the parts that they needed to repair weren't available locally. Everything we teach them is all made locally and all made manually, requiring no electricity, and using all local materials. So for us, it was really all about, because all of these technologies, all these solutions are only as good as the people who maintain them, are the people who know how to manage them and build them and share them with others. And so our goal was very much to make sure that included in the hardware of these technologies and these solutions, there was a software component of ensuring that those who need to know and who are most affected by it had the information they needed. And that's it.
That's it?
That's not it, but that's as much as I'll tell you now so that we can open up to the conversation. And that's what we do. So, yeah.
Wow, it's so beautiful. It reminds me of Wangari Maathai, really, like the work that she did with the Million Trees movement in Kenya, and it's so great to see this level of social change and seeing these women being recognized for bringing health and livelihoods to their communities. It's a
definitely
beautiful example, and you can see the ripple happening. And I just want to really recognize your work as a social justice movement and how, it's international development, it's technical, but it's transformative.
It's been exciting to watch because these women had absolutely, they just didn't see this in their future. Just like they're sort of experiencing what I felt when I first started learning. I mean, the more I learned, the more I knew I had to do it, and the more I felt confident in going out there because of the passion that I felt for the issue. And I just see them going through what I felt like I went through when I first started learning about all of this, and just knowing that if I don't share what I learned, and if they don't share with me what they learn, then we're just not going to be able to progress and evolve as a collective that much faster. So for us, it's been incredible to watch these women. I mean, two of them were just featured on a 25-minute documentary on Al Jazeera. They have a series called Women Make Change, and they made 5 documentaries of women around the globe, and they selected 2 of our women to represent water, which is very exciting.
Wow, congratulations. Yeah, we'll send that out, if it's okay, along with Warren's blog about water after this for anyone viewing and anyone on our list. And thank you so much, Gemma. And following this and getting, to hear from the audience, we have some questions. There is someone from Haiti, I believe, with a question about food security. I'm going to hand it over to Jay, who's got the list of questions there. And also, if you and Warren have questions for each other, love to weave those in as well. Jay?
Thank you, Melanie, and thank you so much, Gemma. That is such inspiring work that's happening. I just love seeing it happen, and I'm so seeing the ties and connections, too, watching Warren's presentation, and can just kind of visualize these, these swales, these water catchment, these regenerative landscapes just happening all across the world. It's just so inspiring. Hearing Warren talking about too is it can be done on a more larger scale with like the excavator, or just people with shovels in your backyard, and all the ways that we can really work with water. It's so inspiring. So thank you both so much. We have about 15 minutes left, so we're just going to now move into some casual dialogue, Q&A, and we do have some questions, as Melanie said, that came in from some people who are watching live, and anyone else, I invite you can still write your question in, and we can see if we can work it in somewhere. So I thought a really good one that came through was from somebody from Haiti that maybe perhaps you both could speak to. Originally from Haiti, but now living in the U.S., is really inspired by this and by permaculture in particularly, and is really inspired to want to be working and supporting the people back in Haiti who are having a really hard time. And the question is around how can this kind of work and work with water really empower us for our own food sovereignty. So I thought that was a great question. Would love to hear both of your thoughts on that. Gemma, do you want to go first?
So Haiti, wow, that I can imagine how difficult it must be to try and find solutions there because of the lack of water, because of the landscape, and because of what happened, with all the logging. And it's so wild to see a bird's eye view of that island and see one half of it being, the Dominican Republic, and having all this greenery, and then to see the other half as if somebody just shaves the side of someone's head, and that hasn't helped with all the hurricanes and things. I know there are some organizations in Haiti. I know of Haiti. I know of organizations that are working there towards that. Definitely things that the kind of permaculture principles and practices that Warren were talking about are some of the best ways to really start there, because the landscape is all practically bare and can be manipulated at this point. As it relates to wash, and I know that's a very big issue as well, because cholera is very high there, and just having to live in temporary shelters and things, those are a little bit, that's almost like a completely different issue to have to deal with, just because of the temporary living conditions a lot of people have to live in. And that's the kind of stuff that I can speak to, just because of because of the sector that I'm in, and the organizations that I know that are doing work down there. But as far as the food security, I definitely think Warren has, Warren's practices and the permaculture principles would absolutely help there.
Thank you, Gemma. I so appreciate the question too as well. Gemma, thank you for your presentation, and I remember back to I had two students who were ministers of agriculture from Haiti come to a permaculture course that I did, and they were talking about, it was just post-earthquake, and they were talking about how the earthquake itself was not actually what was going to be the downfall of the people there, but it was actually the logging that you mentioned, Gemma. It was the deforestation of that landscape that actually was basically decapitating the ability of people there to have food sovereignty, to have an ecology that could actually sustain them. And in answering, the question, just from my standpoint, is that when we have an intact ecology, we have a process by which the water slows down. Slow-moving water can actually grow biological systems. Fast-moving water, you have less biodiversity. So it's the natural principle. Whenever you see fast-moving water, there's less biodiversity within that water than slow-moving water. So a lot of the issues that are going on in Haiti have to do with the water has nothing slowing its kinetic energy to actually help it to spread and sink into the landscape so that it can be picked up by the food systems that are there. Water, the issue you mentioned, Gemma, which was cholera, so often the issues of cholera happen when you have the most available water falling from the sky. You see all over the world, the epidemic of cholera rises during the rainy seasons because you have all this nutrient that is from usually human fecal matter that's on the landscape get washed into the water systems that people are drinking from. And yet it's the time of year when you have the most available water that can be drunk safely from the sky. It's such an amazing time of year to be able to actually have your water needs met in a safe way from rainwater harvesting. And so I think, like, when I hear that story, I feel like the issues that you're talking about, Gemma, with cholera, with health, are the same issues that are addressed well will actually help the agriculture, because all the nutrients that are in the landscape that are causing diseases during the rainy season could be translated into agricultural production. And so I really feel like, especially Haiti, there is so much opportunity for food sovereignty to happen because of its climate, because of the diligence of the people there, because that there is an ability for people to rebound. I've seen from my friends who are from Haiti that they are able to rebound and remap the way they work with their landscape. And so I would suggest, from my standpoint, that it's about slowing the water and converting it into food production. And that is the way that you're going to have food security in no time. And it's not rocket science, and it's all biological. It's not technological. It's biological. And that's when you can access it no matter how much money you make. Money is not about wealth. Wealth has to do if you have water, if you have food. So really, it's about using systems that you can create biologically there, which will give you the most food sovereignty in that part of the world, in every part of the world.
Great, thank you so much, Warren and Gemma.
Yeah.
That was a really great answer to a complicated and challenging question. I think it's really important, definitely, and water so much relates to food sovereignty. So we probably only have time for a little more. How about, this is a good one. It's generally a pretty broad one, but it would be, I think, great to bring this back up again. And it seems to be the big question right now, especially here in California, with no real answer, but would love to just hear both of your thoughts on this, and that would be, how do we solve California's drought? And what can we do on a policy level as well? So that is the big question out there. Anyone want to take that one on first?
I'll speak on the small scale in terms of household, but I know that our household use, and Warren was talking about this earlier. I mean, our household use of water is so minuscule compared to the amount of water that we use in agriculture. I know that there are so many efforts for us to at the household level to have these, slow running showers, less water, less flushing, and gray water reuse, and those are all great, and also being addressed at the policy level too. Having the gray water code change so that there are some gray water systems that can be built without certificates and things like that. But I think where that real impact is, and I know that Warren can speak to this much more, where the real impact is where we buy our food and where we access our food, because of the amount of embedded water in the products that we use and the food that we eat, affects our water, quote, use as a state. So I know on the small scale level, in terms of households, there are gray water systems and gray water technologies that you can implement in your house, as well as composting toilets, so no flush toilets, no waterless toilets, things like that you could do at the local level, at the house level. But when it comes to needing to think about how we're going to save water on a bigger scale, and honor it and have it be of most service to everything that we need. A lot of it will have to come, on a daily basis. It will have to come from our choice of where we buy our food and what kind of products we buy.
Thanks.
Thank you, Gemma. In just thinking about that, I really appreciate that, Gemma, because I think it's being water conscious is something that we have often in I call it the 1/3 world, because most of the people live in the 2/3 world, and many people live in the 1/3 world, but not as many in the rest of the world. So I don't like to look at it as the third world and the first world, because I don't look at it that way. But in the 1/3 world, we don't often have a water consciousness, and I think how we deal with our gray water, how we deal with toileting, how we deal with moving our usage of water to something that's equitable and actually we have a relationship with. Because I often ask people, okay, if the water stops coming to your tap, where's the nearest spring that you can go and drink water, because you can only go for 4 days at the most without water, and after the 5th day you die. And so do you know where you can get water if it stops coming to you? And that question often shakes up a lot of my urban friends, because they don't know, and they don't have a relationship with a spring, and they don't have a relationship with a water source near them. And I think it's really important for us to have that wherever we live. If you live in the middle of Los Angeles or San Francisco, where were the old springs in those areas? Where did the water come from? Where did it move? That city, the different cities that we have are there because of water. That's always the case. The water defines where cities get put, and not anything else, and all over the world. And so realizing that if you're living in a city, you're there because of a relationship with water. So thank you for bringing that up, Gemma, because it's important for us to have that consciousness right from where we live, and then move out to then the things where we're inviting through our purchases what we bring into our life, like our food. The question's a big one, like what do you do about the California drought? Well, starting from a big pattern, it's, you have to look at carbon sequestration to, minimize the climate extremes that are going on. I think that is a big story here, because I don't think it's just drought. We've been programmed to think that drought is really bad and rain is really good, but we also see that the extremes of both are what are the most damaging. So even having water coming in really extreme events is also really damaging. And it's really important for us to kind of buffer those shocks of the extremes, and how we design our landscapes, whether it be an urban landscape or whether it be a farming landscape. How do we design to be able to allow water to move in a way that's in its most natural form? And I think there's some definite regulations that can be done, because right now so many of the most regenerative practices around water, around sanitation, are actually illegal in California. And Gemma had talked about the new gray water laws are just the baby step that have happened now to allow us to do a few things within the gray water laws, but there's so much more that has to happen. I think we need to actually have mandates for basically no runoff in everything, in all the landscapes below the key points, so to speak, or to have in the landscape, higher up in the landscape, we're actually helping the water to sink into the ground. So in places like upper parts of Los Angeles, they actually have laws right now that say you can't build and without, if you have any runoff off your property, you can't get a permit. So that kind of thinking has to happen. We need to actually design our landscapes, but we also need to take that beyond urban landscapes into farming landscapes. We need to inspire farmers to actually have water plans, to actually have plans that they're actually putting more water back in the aquifers than they're taking out. And if they can't do their agriculture in a way that's net positive to the aquifer, then they are not permitted to do it. I think we need to get that strict with it, because it's literally stealing from our grandchildren to feed ourselves now. And I know we can do it. That's the other thing. I just know we can do it. The technologies are not rocket science. We know what to do. Like on our little farm, we could mimic it on any landscape and do it in a way that's site context specific. So I think in answering that question, I think there's so much more. I mean, that's a whole nother podcast and maybe a 2-week course and maybe a lifelong of diving into. But that idea of the drought is actually a wake-up call for us to understand our relationship with water.
Wow, great. Thank you so much, Warren. Thank you both. You're right. That is a very big question. It doesn't necessarily just have one answer. A lifelong of practice, and really, I think what we can each do as individuals, as many hands make work light. And the more that all of us really understand these principles and ways that we can just learn to work with water better, from in our home use to just in our backyards to in our scaling out to our neighborhoods, to our communities, to our bioregions policy level, that we want to really, as Brock Dolman would say, slow it, spread it, sink it. I'd add store it, share it, savor it as well. So thank you so much. Brock says hi, by the way, through the chat, and I wanted to just reference one thing in response to the Haitian questioner about the work of Soil, an organization in Haiti called Sustainable Organic Integrated Livelihoods, doing some amazing work in Haiti around that kind of work. So we're about out of time. I know there's much more we could talk about, like Warren said, maybe in a future webcast. Thank you both so much, and I want to just leave people with some resources of where they can get some information, both with the work that you both are doing. So I can just say it for you, or perhaps you both could have some closing words on that.
Yeah, and thank you so much. Some websites from each of you, and then we'll close. And thank you.
Well,
Gemma?
just our work, globalwomenswater.org, globalwomens with an S, water.org, is where you can learn sort of the work that we're doing. There's definitely things that you can find on the international WASH initiatives and our work towards that. Our work there, you can. There's the Sustainable Development Goals just came out, so you can look for that, as well as the Joint Monitoring Project, which is basically telling you all the issues that are happening around the globe, country by country. So
that's great. And a lot of the work that I'm doing falls under our quailsprings.org and also permaculturedesign.us. And we also have a website down in Kenya, if you look up Permaculture Research Institute of Kenya. And then I also want to just share, I know Brock Dolman has been doing a lot of work, and I think it's still called the Water Institute, but I use a lot of his work and a lot of his wisdom in the work that I'm doing. So Brock, my hat's off to you. If I had a hat on, I'd take it off, but also look up the work that he's doing, because there's a lot of people really coming together around water, and it's flowing between all of us. So thank you.
yes, definitely Brock Dolman. He was my teacher. He was my first water teacher too. So he's definitely the source.
I also want to put one other resource out there. I just was on the phone earlier today with a guy named Brad Lancaster, who wrote the Rainwater Harvesting for Dryland books, and also there's Oasis Design and Art Ludwig, who all are pioneers in the field of water, and who I look to as people who are my teachers. So thank you.
Sorry, now that you said that, there's a Greywater Action is a great group that does household level greywater systems and teaches others how to do it. There's a book out that just came out. Laura Allen wrote it, of Greywater Action. That's another really great resource if you want to start small and you want to start it at your household.
Great.
Thank you. And just coming back to the individual, we are what we drink and we are what we eat. So Warren had a slide up, and it was showing a quarter pounder versus a lot of other things that we could be eating that are plant-based, and just looking at the whole system of how we're all connected and what are the things we eat. So lower down in the food chain. Thank you so much. Much love.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Just some last words from me. Thank you both so much. And for anyone, I want to plug one other resource. That is our upcoming Northern California Permaculture Convergence. It's the 10th one this year, the Building Resilient Communities Convergence. There'll be lots of amazing workshops. Water is definitely a big theme this year. Brock Dolman will be there as well as many other people. I think we have over 100 different presenters coming. So thank you both so much. Thank you, everyone. And please stay tuned for further broadcasts of this Pulse of Movement. We're going to be featuring various leaders doing all kinds of different work in various sectors that are making a difference and facilitating transformation in all the areas that we are inspired to do so at these real critical times. So thank you so much. Thank you, Melanie. Thank you, Warren. Thank you, Gemma. And have a great day, everyone.